Hi all, let's have a look at the World Chess Championship Game 9. So after 8 draws, it's getting closer to a tie-break situation. So after 12 games, there would be a tie-break if it's all games are drawn. So this is the 9th game. Would it be a decisive game? Let's have a look. But before we do, it's worth mentioning, I believe, that Carlsen had an injury. He had collided with a member of the Norwegian media while playing football on the rest day. So he was playing this game with a plaster over his black eye. The player he bumped into was an NRK reporter, Emil Gukild, who had also a plaster on his head. So thankfully, Magnus didn't have a major concussion or anything. He was able to play, and he also tweeted about it, saying it was like heating up. The World Championship was heating up. So anyway, C4 from Magnus, and we have the English opening E5, knight C3, knight F6, knight F3, knight C6. The 4 knights. This is a repeat of an earlier game. G3, D5, C takes, knight takes, bishop G2, and Caruana's kind of pet line, it seems, bishop C5. The more usual sort of bog standard move is knight B6, for example, like this, has been seen in a huge number of games. This continuation, for example, like this. And in ChessBase Livebook, funny enough, there's bishop takes C6 here, which I find a bit disturbing actually, because it weakens the light squares, but apparently this is okay. The engine's Stockfish 9 prefers actually not to do that. Prefers actually rook b5, and it thinks this is an equal position. So this would be like the kind of standard territory which Fabiano is kind of avoiding with his kind of pet system, which is much rarer, but it seems to be perfectly playable. So bishop c5, both sides castle, d3, we have rook e8, and now this move trying to get Fabiano out of his preparation, bishop g5, trying to provoke a weakness. In this position here, knight g5 has been seen in the game Caruana against Adams in London 2017, just last year, and that ended in actually a win for Caruana. So that game with knight g5 had this continuation. Let's have a quick look at it. Yes, so white has treble pawns in the center, so you might think, okay, that's interesting pawn structure here. And let's see, let's just whiz through it. It's in the pinned comment of this game, but eventually it seems Fabiano broke through in the endgame, creating that passed pawn there. Very dangerous passed pawn. And here black resigned. So yeah, 68 moves there. And also there's another intriguing stem game to check out, which is bishop d2. That was a draw. I'm not going to go through that. So that was Wesley So against Caruana in Paris 2018. So that was a draw in 67 moves. So with Caruana playing on the black side. So he's played on both the black side and the white side of this position. So anyway, bishop g5. We have actually Caruana playing knight takes c3 here. On f6, this is quite interesting. There's queen b3, in fact. The bishop doesn't have to move immediately, just putting more pressure on d5 and b7 is actually annoying for black. For example, this, white can pedantically take the pawn there, and it seems emerge with a good position, and then eventually retreat the bishop. This seems to be quite nice for white, this kind of scenario. So anyway, we have actually also, instead of f6, let's have a look at this again. There's queen d7, and this should be a small edge for white as well. So it's kind of a nuisance position in a way. So f6, after knight takes, b takes, we see f6. So this kind of weakens, of course, the light squares. Is this significant? This diagonal or any other weaknesses around here, are these weaknesses actually significant enough The bishop actually drops all the way back to be able to play bishop b2. So bishop b2 is the idea here. And then maybe, d4. So that's the idea. Bishop e6 is played. Bishop b2 and bishop b6 dropping back, d4. Okay, we have now bishop d5. Let's have a look at the forcing continuation. Isn't black covering a bit, against this with, say, bishop d5 here, you might think. White can actually be really solid with e3, and this provides a kind of rock to the bishop on b6. It seems as though white should have a very pleasant position here in this kind of scenario. This seems quite nice. Small advantage at least. So bishop d5 was played, not trying to resolve the central tension with ed. We have now queen c2. Now actually ed is played. C takes, bishop e4. We have check, bishop d5. Queen drops back. Now bishop takes f3. This is a very committal move. Black could have played something like knight a5 to try and get the knight into c4. For example, rook e1, let's say c6, delaying knight c4 for a moment. This should be a small edge, though, for white, technically. Here, though, instead of c6, maybe knight c4 immediately, as well as an idea, just put the knight back to d6. And maybe that's just a little bit, just too little an advantage to be anything more than even. So anyway, bishop takes f3 is quite committal. So queen b3 check, bishop takes, and there's an undertone here of opposite coloured bishops emerging. Yeah, these are opposite coloured bishops, and we're kind of going into that scenario. So is it going to be drawish? So e3, queen e5, but white is picking up b7 to get the pawn back. So equal on pawns, queen e7, and now kind of an aggressive move, looking move h4. Maybe Magnus was trying to provoke something quite committal to like h5 ideally, but g6 was played, kind of discouraging h5 immediately, but it was played anyway. Let's have a look at this position. If h5, there is a bit of a target. Magnus kind of mentioned, that was one of his ideas, to try and provoke a move like h5 to get a target in the post-mortem interview. So queen c2, for example, would be trying to exploit this target, and this is a scenario where white ends up being it looks as though white would end up being better, but even in this scenario, this very tactical scenario, when this is a dangerous exchange sack, black seems to have enough resources, actually, even with h5. Yeah, but it is a long-term target. If we look at this again and consider a5 as a token move, what is white doing if there isn't accuracy here in this scenario with queen g6? This is very dangerous, check, and then that is just winning for white. So yeah, there's h5 is very, very doubtful, actually. h6 is also a little bit doubtful for weakening light squares even more. So this is it does seem as though it does do the job of discouraging h5. h5 played immediately. There's also bishop f3, though, is more modest, perhaps a little bit less controversial. If h5 here to stop any h5 from white, then this position should be a small edge for white in theory. But anyway, h5 immediately, and that was actually taken. This is probably the best reaction in this particular configuration. If king g7, then king g2 with the idea of rook h1. And for example, rook takes, g takes, bishop f3, pawn moves, queen a4 actually threatens rook d7 as well as the pawn. So hd rook d7. If rook d8 to stop rook d7, then this position seems as though white should, in theory, have a significant edge because of the structure, but it's actually kind of difficult to prove. The opposite colour bishops make things difficult to prove here, but yeah, technically it's nice for white, we can say that. Okay, so the other option, which is a bit weird, just check out briefly, g5 as a reaction, should land white again, technically a nice advantage. So anyway, g takes h5. We have queen c4 to put the brakes on h4 actually, and if white goes all in with some sort of h-file attack, it just leads to a total disaster. Say king g2, h4 being permitted, rook h1, this is just far too slow. hg, black just say to double rooks, just say what if, then that never happens, and it's a meltdown on e3. So this would be a massive advantage for black, yeah. But white doesn't want to play kind of suicidally necessarily like that. So let's see, rook h1 here. This position, instead of rook h5, let's try and do something else here as an alternative. fg, there's just queen takes e3. And no, queen takes e3 actually just draws because of this perpetual. Well, and taking there, that's drawing. But actually, black can do better than queen takes e3 with rook g8, and should have at least a small edge here. So yeah, this white can't go wild basically with the h file in this position. Yeah, queen c4 is much safer to stop h4 from black. So queen c4 looking at controlling the h4 square. Yeah, white can't go too crazy with king g2, it seems. Check out the pinned comment for the variations on that. So black renews the idea though of playing for h4 with f5, opening up this diagonal. So h4 to kind of batter down white's pawn structure on dark squares, which is a great target, of course, for this dark square bishop to try and, you know, potentially undermine this structure. This structure is like being put under scrutiny in a way. Yeah, on h4 immediately, then white could just take, and there's nothing black there. So f5 on rook g8, by the way, then actually king g2 might be quite good here with, yeah, you know, with the idea of, yeah, using that h file, and you see that black's pawns are pretty fragmented in this position, so white should be doing pretty well here with a big advantage, in fact, yeah, because black's pawns are totally just wrecked. So this move g takes h5 under the right circumstances can look like completely diced pawns, but here f5, very very good move, f5, bishop f3, and now dissolving, yeah, not leaving any structure to be attacked, dissolving here, giving back the pawn, h4. Magnus took on d8. If he plays queen takes h4, this position is nothing to write home about. It's kind of equal. Black can, yeah, play that structural damage, and opposite colour bishops, it looks fine. It should be equal. So rook takes d8, rook takes, now g takes, and at first this seems a bit scary, but you know, with this open file, but actually there doesn't seem to be anything too much to be worried about. Rook g4 is never working because queen f6, but if we look at the world, just for fun, let's look at the world rook g4. I'm pretty sure this doesn't do anything. Bishop takes, and then white, yeah, it just plays something like rook h1, for example. Yeah, and there's no wildness on that g file, but there are some interesting variations coming up around here to do with king safety. Let me navigate to them. The queen f4 was played, bishop c5, rook g1, the rooks come off. Bishop d6, queen a4, f4, queen takes f7, a7, f takes e3. Here, if queen takes h4, then check, and then check here. This is an interesting forcing line where black has to be quite careful about being mated, and white could end up being better here. Yeah, this could end up being a big advantage for white. So yeah, so we have the more careful f takes e3. After queen takes h4. a4 is played. There's an alternative in check this position, but I'm not sure it's anything really a big deal. So a4 is played. Queen f6. Now, yeah, a4 is offering this pawn, funny enough. Is it that dangerous to take it? Well, okay, so queen f6 was played. Why not take it? Well, there's check, 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 check. Bishop here threatening things. Let's see. So check. The thing is, check. Black has perpetual check anyway. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, it can actually be taken. But queen f6 was played. Yeah, queen f6, bishop d1, queen e5, queen takes, bishop takes, a5. It's looking a little bit drawish with the opposite coloured bishops. And king comes to the centre. Bishop g4 here. Actually, king d5 appears to be drawish as well in this position. That would be a total draw. Bishop can't checkmate. No one's going to win that. So bishop g4, bishop g1, and yeah, it gets to be yeah, pretty even here. Bishop b6, bishop h3, bishop e3. Bishop goes back. Bishop a7, king 4, bishop b6. King e6, check. Bishop d3, king e6. And the game ended here. There was a bit of drama in the press conference, post-mortem press conference. So Carlsen's voice rose because there was a reporter that kind of asked quite a blunt question, like, why did you continue to play for so long? In the endgame, when a draw seemed inevitable, Carlsen replied, it doesn't mean you shouldn't play. I'm trying to entice him to play h5, and if he doesn't play h5, then at least and if he does play h5, then at least I have a target. So, but obviously if he just keeps still and keeps his fortress, just waiting for my king to enter, then there's nothing. But there's no harm in playing. I really don't understand the point. So he seemed a little bit irritated. Yeah, it seems very difficult to get an advantage with white in this match in particular. So yet another draw. Just, you might want to just see what would happen in this position a little bit more. Let's have a look. Check. This is the fictional continuation. Where, okay, this pawn could come over here. And white's sort of clinging on to f5 here. That pawn can be given. Try and get the pawn away, sorry, the king away from f5. And this position is level. White can't really do anything. Both sides can't really do anything. That should be level. Black has to be careful about not giving up this pawn, because then that would actually be losing potentially. Yeah. So apart from that, that's fine. So okay. So yet another draw. If you enjoyed this game analysis for whatever reason, yeah, then please click on the top left box to become a member of chessworld.net. You can play against other YouTubers. There's YouTube analysis of this game and other games, like the Leela chess games, which are often decisive. On the improved menu, learn from the masters. You can check the YouTube order there. Okay, comments, questions, donations, see the description. Like, share, subscribe with the notification bell, all very appreciated. Thanks very much.